All right, folks, so we're going to have to make this quick. It's the rundown. We got to go. It's February 3rd, 5:26 California time in the morning, and the markets are acting as if they want to fall. Let's start with Bitcoin, of course. Bitcoin is going to have a little bit of a gap down first thing this morning when we open up. Should be opening up at around, let's see, a gap down to about 98, and then it dropped below 97.58 where I was saying over here, and currently it's sitting at about 95.110. So we're going to open up around in here somewhere if it continues with doing what it's doing currently. We still have an hour before the market's open, so we could either open up lower or open up higher. But you know what the deal is with this gap down. If we stay below this gap down, that means we're going to continue to go lower, all right, and fill that gap later on down the road, and maybe might come back down here and fill this gap. Okay, so that's Bitcoin. Next up is oil, and oil is showing a little weakness this morning. Remember, it had this doji right here, so if it opens up below this doji, we're probably going to come back down into here at around 71.61 to check for support here. If that doesn't hold, you might be heading lower in the oil. But oil is heading into a bear market, so keep an eye on that one. Be careful with it. In the pre-market, it popped up to about 75.18, up around in here somewhere, but I'm sure it's getting rejected by this 200-day simple moving average coming down, acting as resistance. And all these moving averages rolling over says that oil may continue to head even lower. All right, next up is gold, and gold fell off, came back down, and tested this 2800 area where we know it should be our support. Then it popped back up, so it made this nice little king scepter right here. So oil may want to continue running higher, or it may want to pull back and check out for this support area one more time and give our moving averages some time to catch up. We'll see what happens with that, but it did hit a high of 28.62, and that's where our new goal is, to reach that 28.62 again. So we'll see what happens with that with gold this morning when the market's open at 6:30 and 9:30 Eastern. Alright, next up is natural gas, and natural gas had a little pop up, got above this resistance area, which we know is now it's going to be support, but it's going to have a gap, so we got to fill that gap before we can go any higher. Or we can go higher, but it's going to be on the back of our minds, worrying about whether or not when we're going to backfill before heading higher. So keep an eye on that. But right now, natural gas is trying to show some bullishness. Next up is the Nasdaq, and the Nasdaq is has this window that it opened up here, pulled back, came down to this support area at 20,983, touched it, and then popped back up. But we have this window open now, so is it going to backfill this window today and sell off tomorrow? That remains to be seen. But currently, there is some weakness showing in the Nasdaq, and most likely it's going to want to backfill, and continue to sell off, because I think we're headed for a bear market. But we'll see. These tariffs, with the tariffs and the prices in the grocery stores are already high already. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the grocery stores was already preconceived. So and a lot of the stuff we're seeing, the prices on things were preconceived, because this is I don't think that the prices in the grocery stores can go any higher, but you never know, because everything right now is still pretty high. Only thing, even the you know, so anyway, keep an eye on that. But the tariffs may be enough to help. It might be a temporary cause for the markets to pull back, but in the long run, I think we're going to be stronger and head higher. But currently, for the short term, be careful with this, because we're still showing weakness and maybe heading into a bear market. Next up is silver, and silver came down, didn't quite take out the bottom of this bar it put in here, but it did come close. Hit about 31.61 in the pre-market down here, almost below this one here, which was 31.56. So it didn't quite take that bar out, but it did get close. But now it looks like it wants to open up around $32.27, which will put it back up here somewhere. 32.27, right? And there, where that little red mark is there, so right about in here, currently wants to open up around there. So we'll see what happens with that. If it's going to open up there, or if it's going to pull back below it. If it pulls back below it, then we need to find some support down in here somewhere, or we're going to continue to sell off. And I don't think that's going to be the case, but we'll have to see what they do with these markets, because right now they're showing weakness all around. The Dow, it put in a gap as well. So when does the Dow want to backfill? It's a window that it opened up there, which is interesting because, you know, this was a previous high at 1.2 where it decided to drop off at, and so then it's got its nether opening here, which is another area where it was finding some resistance as well. So that's just another indicator that there's something going on in those areas, and something to be paid attention to. Alright, so now the question is, do we backfill early and then continue down lower, or do we just head lower? Alright, that remains to be seen. We'll find out in due time. Okay, and that's the Dow. Alright, next up is the corn. And corn came back down and wanted to retest this area early. So it's down here around here at around 472.14. Looks like it wants to open up back up around here at around 477. So corn is still trying to be bullish. We need our moving averages to catch up, but we'll see what happens in here. I'm not sure, and I need to maybe try to find out where we're getting our corn, or are we still growing our own corn. I know there's a lot of cornfields where I live, so corn may not be an issue for Californians. I don't know about the rest of the world. Next up is Apple, and Apple, of course, is going to open up at around looks like about 231, which will put it down in here. So it's showing some weakness this morning. It hit a low of 226, which will put it back down around here. So Apple's probably going to open up with a gap, and it looks like it may be backfilling that gap. So be careful with Apple. They may continue to sell off and head into a bear market. Okay, so be careful with that. Next up is AEM, and AEM looks like it wants to open up around 91.35, which put it down around here, around its support area. If this doesn't hold, look out below. Next up is Affirm, and Affirm hit a low of 55.30, which will put it, let's see, down around here somewhere, which will put it back below these moving averages, which is going to make it have a gap as well. If it doesn't want to backfill that gap and wants to come down in here somewhere, if it gets below this $50 area, look out below. It's going to be heading into a bear market. So be careful with the firm. AGI. AGI is kind of doing the same thing, opening up around, oh, it hit $20.81, but it's putting a nice big bar back up to $21.24, which will put it about, let's see, around here somewhere. So it dropped down to about 20.81. So that's not bad. That actually looks like it's this bar here. So we're not getting anything really out of this one. Maybe a little bit down in here somewhere. We're not really getting much out of this one just yet. But I think I have to wait and see what happens. It's in a nice bull trend. So maybe it might be strong enough to withstand what's going on today. Some things may be affected, some might not. We'll see what happens. But be nimble on a day like today, because once people wake up and see what's going on, they're going to be freaking out. All right. So you may get a lot of money pulled out of the markets real quick this morning, especially those guys that went hog heavy on a Friday. All right. So AMD looks like it wants to open up around 115 because it dropped down to 109, which put it below down here, even below this low. So it's going to have a gap or a window open too, and it looks like it's backfilling that window real quick. So it may not open up with the gap. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure if that's going to open up with the gap or not because it's already backfilled it. But it definitely tested out that area below that 112. So we'll see what happens with AMD. If it opens up above 115, then it may still be safe. If it doesn't, look out below. Next up, Amazon. And Amazon did the same thing. Dropped down to about 226.86, which put it down, where's it, 233? Down around here somewhere. Right, this low of this bar is 225, so it got almost to the low of this bar, and then now it looks like it wants to open up back above this 233. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Amazon, excuse me, with Amazon when the market's open at 6:30. If it opens up above 233, may not be nothing to worry about. If it doesn't, then we're gonna have to reassess it this evening. Next up is ARK, and ARK, of course, hit a low of 60 because we know Bitcoin took a dump, so ARK dumped with it and hit 60, but it kind of popped back up to 60.08, which would put it around in here somewhere. So took out a couple bars and made this doji come to life, because now it's below that doji even, and it's going to have a, if it does open up where it's at currently, it should have a little window that it opened up also. So it may need to reconcile that window before going higher, or reconcile that window before going lower. Only time will tell. Next up is Aircell, and Aircell Corp had this doji here. Doesn't have any pre-market activity, so we'll see what happens with them when they open up, when the bell rings. All right, if it opens up lower, of course we know doji and open up lower usually indicates it wants to continue going lower. So we'll see what happens with that. And of course it's still in these moving averages, so it's still within the trade winds, and these moving averages haven't actually rolled up to take it higher. They're still look like they're heading flat, and if it does pull out, it's going to pull these moving averages down closer together. So we may need to collapse these anyway in order to give us that lift to lift us higher. So it may come back down into this consolidation area that it had down here, where it just kept consolidating before trying to go higher. Yeah, we could set that up right now and just kind of to get an idea. I don't want to do too much of this because this takes time, but we'll do it on this one because I believe this is where we're heading back to at some point, and that's probably about right there. Alright. Alright. That's the only one I'm going to do it to, I promise you. Okay, so 640 and 604 maybe on Aircell. Get back into this range and then consolidate before trying to go higher. Let me get that ring out of here. Sorry about that. My wife's probably out there feeding the cats. Let's see, where are we? There we are. Alright, shouldn't be bothered by that anymore. Alright, next up is American Waterworks. And American Waterworks, 123. So it's going to open up down around here somewhere, taking out all this stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. Keep an eye on that. If the support doesn't hold here, look out below. Next up is BITI. BITI set to open up a little bit higher at around 23.36. Still within this range. Hit a high of 24.21. Still didn't break out of this range. So Um, that's the inverse of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin continues to fall. This should continue to rise. Next up is BOIL, BOIL, and BOIL gapped up this morning, hitting about 59.45, and that's the natural gas ETF. So we know natural gas popped up this morning also. So we'll see what happens with that, if it can maintain its luster and continue higher. Next up is Beyond Meat, and Beyond Meat is about to open up around 382, which will put it down below this bar here and open up down here somewhere. And so it's going to continue its bear stance and heading lower on Beyond Meat. Next up is Cake, and Cheesecake Factory hit about a 52.85, which put it down around here somewhere. Okay, so it may be wanting to come back and retest this area for support before trying to get back through this 56.58. All right, but that's Cheesecake Factory, and it's still in a bull market. It's just, it ran high pretty fast, so it may want to come back and check in, find its footing, and then retest this area up here where it got rejected now. Okay, so that's rejected, and it put in that fat doji, so we're going to open up below that fat doji, which is a sign that we're going to continue going lower. All right, but we don't know how far or how low we're going to go, but we will continue to pull back. Next up is Caterpillar, and Caterpillar is about to open up at around $359, which will put it down here somewhere. 359 to put it in our trade winds and ready to go bearish. So keep an eye on Caterpillar. It's shutting all those windows, and that's the last window it has to close, so that window will be shut after that. If it opens up at 359, it'll shut all those windows, will be closed, and it'll be set to head back higher. But if that's what it chooses to do, it'll be stuck in these trade winds, and these trade winds may roll over and force it down lower. We'll see what happens with Caterpillar. Next up is Canopy Growth, and we already know the story on that one. It was selling off, and it continues to sell off. Next up is Comcast, and Comcast had a lot of chatter this morning. It hit a low of 32.71, which didn't take this bar out. So we'll see what happens with this on the open at 6:30. All right, next up is CMG. CMG Chipotle Mexican Grill, about to set to open up around $56, which will put it down around here somewhere. Taking out that bar and this bar, so the only thing that's left is this one here. If we can't get below 55.65, we may continue lower, and at that point, look out below. Next up is CNP. CNP is CenterPoint Energy, and CenterPoint Energy is trying to hang in there. It's got this support area at 32.28. It's set to open up in pre-market. No data for the pre-market, so we'll see what happens with this one when the market opens in another, looks like 45 minutes. All right, so we'll see what happens in 45 minutes with this one. Next is corn, and corn, as we know, pulled back to the support area that we had. Looks like it's about to open up maybe around $19.47, which will put it in here somewhere. Okay, so it blew through this support area and may use this one as some support. So we'll figure that out when the market's open. Alright, we'll give it a little more strength there. Alright, next up is, I said I wasn't going to do that, huh? Well, I wouldn't. This line was already there, so back off, man. I'm a scientist. Alright, next up is Corsair Gaming, and Corsair Gaming is set to open up below where I started my trade at, and so we'll see what happens with that. 853 is about where it wants to open, which is probably in here somewhere. So we'll see what happens with that. If it wants to continue to fall off, or if we're going to bounce up and get back up into in here somewhere, or if we have to move our our line down in here somewhere to find our new support area, which may be here at around 835, or in here somewhere at around, well, we already got it there, $8. So we'll see what happens. We do have our moving averages that need to 150 needs to cross over, we got a 20 needs to catch up, and our 8 and our 9 are there, but now they're going to be overhead resistance. So we got a lot going on here, of course, there, so be careful with that one. We may fall back into this range. Alright, next up is Capital Southwest, and Capital Southwest about to open up at around $22.10, so put it down just below this bar here. That low of that bar is 21, so not even below that bar. So in here somewhere, which isn't too bad, but it's already in a bear market, so careful with that. So it looks like we just came back, filled in this gap that we opened up, and now we're going to continue lower. So next stop is 2068. If 2068 doesn't hold, then 2026 on Capital Southwest Corporation. I'm sorry. Next is DKL, and DKL getting some chatter in the pre-market, but it's bouncing around, so we're not going to really think about that one. It had a low of 43.20. Not much to say until the market's open, because 43.20 is still at this bar here, I believe. So yeah, so we don't really have anything to go on DKL. Alright, next up is DRIP, and DRIP is hit 1065, so it's still looking about the same. Nothing really happened, just got a lot of chatter in this area here. So DRIP hasn't gone higher or gone lower. I think oil was looking bullish this morning, wasn't it? Let's take a look at oil again. And yeah, so oil's looking bullish this morning, so DRIP may pull back some. We'll see what happens with that, but currently oil's looking kind of bullish. So DRIP is going to start looking bearish when the market's open. Next up is Dust, and Dust is the bear ETF for gold, and it looks like it wants to open up at around $52, so it's popping up, so gold must be pulling back, so keep an eye on that. 52 will close this window, but that's about it. So it may close this window and then continue on its way back down that way, which means gold is just barely going to pull back enough for this guy to shut his window, and then gold's going to probably continue higher, but that remains to be seen. It's not written in stone, okay, but as we know, gold has a little wisdom of its own that it needs to reconcile, so we'll see what happens with that. Next up is Expand Energy, and Expand Energy set to open up around this support area here. We'll see what happens in the next 43 minutes or so. Alright, next up is Fastly, and Fastly looks like it wants to open up lower at about $9.98, which will put it down around here somewhere, in here, taking out that bar there and getting into a portion of that bar. So Fastly is starting to show some weakness. Maybe we're going to come back and completely shut this window before continuing higher. So we'll see what happens with Fastly when the market's open. Grayscale Bitcoin is set to open up at around 75.42, which is below this line, so it's going to be down around our channel here. So I don't know if it's going to get back into the channel or stay in the channel. Actually, it did fall into the channel in here. We don't know if it's going to stay in this channel and head lower, or if it's going to go backfill this window that opened, close this window, and then head lower. That remains to be seen, but right now Bitcoin is showing weakness, and so is Grayscale. Next up is GME, and GME hit a low of 24.49, which put us below our support area here, but now it's coming up to retest our support area in the pre-market. So we have to see what happens with that. We open up below our support, then that could be mean trouble for us. If we open up above it, then maybe we're going to backfill and find some support in here, consolidate before heading higher. If not, then we may continue to sell off in the GME. Next up is Google, and Google came back to test this area here at 197, but it hit 196.35 in the pre-market. So 196.35, high here of 196.79 and a low here of 197. So there was a little window open that it was trying to test on how to close it. So I think we're going to come down and shut this window before heading higher. I think it just ran a test over the weekend. So we'll see what happens with that. We open up and go back and depending on where we open up at. So we'll see what happens in the next 40 minutes. All right. Next up is Gush, and of course we know Gush should be turning around when the market's open. So we'll see what happens with that. But right now oil is trying to look bullish. Next up is Intel, and Intel is sitting on this support area right here at 1893. We'll have to see what happens when the market opens. All right, next up is JDST. And JDST, Barry TF for the gold, should be turning around because we know gold is pulling back to maybe close this window that it opened. All right, next up is JILL, and JILL set to open up at around 25.90, which is down here somewhere. So it opened up a window, or it's set to open up a window when it does open. So we'll see what happens with JILL. If it opens up this window, then you know it's either going to go higher. Go lower, or backfill, close the window, back up, go up, close window, and then head lower, or go up, close the window, and continue higher. We have to wait and see what happens with JILL. But currently, it's looking weak in the pre-market, and so most likely we're going to open up lower and continue lower on JILL. Next up is JNUG, and JNUG is our bull ETF, and we know that should be pulling back some more in here and shutting this window and before heading higher. So have to wait and see what happens with JNUG, but we do need to reconcile that window that it opened. And then we got Goldcorp, King Growth, same thing, should be pulling back a little bit. Set to open up. It had a pointer down to about $10.35, so look for a pullback to at least $10.35 at some point. All right, take out that pointer. Next up is KSS, Kohl's Corp, and Kohl's Corp is set to open up at around $12.80, which will put it just a little bit below this bar here. So maybe look for some support at around $12.62. If it doesn't hold, look out below on Kohl's. Next up is LABD, which is the Biotech Bear ETF for the biotechs, and it is set to open up at around $6.97, which should put it up here somewhere at our moving average, our 20-day moving average. So it should open up around a 20-day moving average, which will give us a window that it opens, which means what? Backfill before heading higher. So, but it looks like it wants to remain in a bullish nature because it wants to stay in this moving average or in these trade winds. So, and it's going to put it about halfway between these trade winds too. So, it may want to stay sitting here and go up and try to get back through that $7.05. In which case, that means the biotech bear is going to continue to sell. So, play it by ear, keep an eye on it, and be careful. And you know our biotech bear, our biotech bull is in a bearish market, so be careful with that. Next up is LAC, and LAC, Lithium Americas Corp, is trying to open up at around $2.90. So we'll see what happens with that. If we get below that, look out below. Next up is Lake, LAKE, and LAKE is hit a low of 2270, which will put it down in here somewhere. And then it's got another one, nope, that was actually, yeah. So be careful. The pre-market, we're not sure where we're going to open up on Lake just yet. We're not getting any more information. but currently the low was 22.70. Next up is Macy's, and Macy's set to open up at around $15.03, right in here somewhere. If it doesn't happen, then look out for a retest of this 14 area. It kind of blew through the 14 area, didn't really hang around very much, so it may want to come back down in here if this doesn't hold as support. Next up is Microsoft, and Microsoft hit a low of 405, which put it back down into this channel in here, right? So be careful with that. Microsoft wants to be back into this channel, so we may come back down to retest this 398 area on Microsoft. But it's got a nice big size window open up here, so at some point we got to reconcile it. So we know we're going to be heading back higher at some point. We just don't know when. I'm not sure if it has any other windows open below, but we'll figure that out later. This is going to be a quick one. We'll try to get through all of these so that you have some. I don't know if you got which ones you might be looking at, but try to get through all of them to help you out. MicroStrategy 293 was the low, set to open up around 310. So that'll put it in here somewhere. So we're going to have a window open on that one as well. Didn't get as low as our support here, but it did get close. So be careful with that one. We may be coming back to retest this support and maybe shut this window. So if we shut this window, we're going to come down into here at around 271. All right. Next up is Netflix, and Netflix hit a low of 952.51, but still above this area here. But we know we have this window that needs to be reconciled, so Netflix may continue to pull back, shut that window before trying to get back higher. All right. So next up is NGD, New Gold, and of course same thing. It's going to be pulling back because gold is pulling back. Next up is NVIDIA, and NVIDIA hit a low of 111.51, which put it way down here somewhere. 111.51. Yeah, down in here somewhere. So if it continues on its path, well, it's currently at about 115. So that'll put it right here, but it still have a little window that it opened up. If it opens up around 115, if it opens up lower, then we have this window we need to reconcile, then we'll have another window that needs to be reconciled. So once it finds some support around 95.46, we may head back up to shut those windows and continue higher. But that remains to be seen. What's going to be happening with these markets with all the stuff that's going on right now. And NWBO looks like it wants to open up at 0.295, but I think that's where it closed on Friday. So we'll have to see where it opens up. Right now it's not giving us any data in the pre-market. Next up is, but we do know our bios are flipping over. Our bull bio is heading down, and our bear bio is heading up. So we'll see how that affects NWBO. If I was wrong about, because if you look, it says it's healthcare, it's not biotech, but I think it's all the same. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Next up is OSS, One Stop Systems, and One Stop Systems doesn't seem to be affected by anything that's going on at the moment, so we have to wait for the charts to start getting active. Next up is Oxy, and Oxy hit a low of 46, so we have to wait and see what happens with that. All right, folks, that's all I got for you this morning. I'm running out of time, but I hope I helped you out a little bit. So thanks. Go through and look at your charts and see what's happening, and see how they're whatever your particular trades are being affected by what's happening in the majors. But currently our majors are giving us a little bit of fits, and even my Texas Roadhouse took a little hit. It looks like it wants to open up down around in here somewhere. All right, but it's still within our our trade winds, and we'll see if that gives us some support. All right, and Wingstop, same thing, set to open up lower in pre-market, so we'll see what happens with that. Tesla, let's see, Tesla Hit a low of 381.55, which 381.55. So it didn't quite take this bar out. Oh yeah, it did, down around here somewhere. So anyway, took this bar out. I'm gonna have a window that it's open, but it's set to open up around 389 before the market's open. But we'll see what happens with that. So anyway, yeah, that's all I got for now. We'll do another one this evening. But yeah, be careful because we know our majors are showing some weakness, and we don't know how long that's going to continue. Sometimes they'll do that and then they'll pop up and shut those windows and then just keep going higher. So be careful with them, especially like the Nasdaq and the Dow. They really like to trick you. So be careful with those. Bitcoin, I think, is just probably about the honest one. It's the most honest you can go with. I think that one is selling, and I think it's going to continue to sell. But that's just me. So that's all I got for now. Hope you have a good week of trading, and be careful out there. These markets are crazy.